Hello world. So, last time we left off, I said we were heading toward the coast of Africa, so this takes place a few minutes later once we reached it. So we can turn off the HUD with F2 and you can see this beautiful planet that we are now orbiting. The higher we get, the better it looks because the texture packages, while massive, I have the 8K version. They're big, but for a planet the size of Earth, when you get low down, you really notice. So, we're heading toward Epiphysis, and so we'll notice that right now we're only at 0.9 megameters, but we'll actually over double this height, so the Earth will keep getting smaller and smaller as we go. So what I did this time is I wrote a script to actually help us re-enter, and it even has some time warp functionality so it doesn't take forever. So let's see. What does this pod have? So the first thing we have is a parachute. So min pressure set, I wrote a general script so it doesn't automatically adjust this, so it's at about 0.6. We'll have an ocean water landing. So this can be about 1,000 or so. If it deploys too early, it just slows down the whole thing and it takes forever to land. I don't really care for watching my parachute sit there and slowly lower my craft down for 10 minutes so I can help it. So of course we have our solar panels, it's always good, we're in direct sunlight now. This is the control system. Here we have another reaction rail. I found that it's somewhat unstable in the atmosphere, so a little bit extra control besides the one that the normal probe control gives us. It just helps a little bit. This was for the fairing. When we came up, you notice there was a nose protector, and that's now gone so we could expose the satellite in the core. But I also found it's great because it provides support. It's basically like a small heat shield. However, if we look here, we actually do have a heat shield. And I used to put the heat shield in here because I was thinking I would jettison the fairing. But I found that the craft would often be very unstable and try to enter sideways, which would immediately burn off the parachute, so that wasn't good. So by putting the heat shield on the outside, it helps kind of reinforce this as something that creates drag, so it slows down a lot quicker. But it also adds a lot of weight. So one thing you'll notice, the heat shield ablator is actually at full. It doesn't need to be at full. We're only going to use maybe 25 of it on the way down. But the extra weight, again, really just means the control wheels can control the descent a lot easier because it's more balanced. So, let's see. You can see that we're moving pretty quick, actually, 7 kilometers a second. When we re-enter, we'll be going a little bit faster, but... So the first thing we're going to copy from the archive, so you can see, I'm using remote text, so we actually have a small delay of about 7 milliseconds. But we'll copy library.ks. So one thing this allows us to do, let me see. What did I do wrong? So library.ks. Yes, path does not exist. Oh, important caveat here. You actually have to tell which drive you're pulling from. So drive 1 is considered to be the vessel that you're currently on. Drive 0 is the archive. So when you store something on your physical computer, it puts it in, let's say virtually it's in the archive. And that means basically mission control. But it also means it's not on the physical memory space of your computer. And so I have to tell it to copy from that to the local directory. So hit that, shouldn't get an error this time. It's good that so let me see. One thing you'll notice if we go back to this, here I'll close this for now. You'll see that we have the, let me see, where's the scripter? Yeah, this. So when you actually install this, I have advanced physical, so we get a lot more options than normal set, but it actually has, you can upgrade the amount of memory it has. So you can see it has a disk space of 10,000. I'm not sure, that might mean 10,000 characters. So this script, I think, the other script we had uses about a quarter of it. So we have plenty of room for the script. The script is a bit smaller. So you can upgrade this if you need. So now going back and reopening the terminal. The next thing we're going to copy is the actual script that I wrote. So 0, I call it unmanned orbiter R for reentry.ks. Do not put a period here. I actually did it once, and it thinks it copied it fine until you run the program and find out the program doesn't actually exist. So once we run it, so unmanned orbiter R.ks period for ending instead of semicolon. We run that, and it has everything it needs. So the first thing it does is it warps us to the hypothesis, and you can use the cool, you get the ETA and then say warp this far in the future. So as we warp, you can kind of see there goes Africa. So if you want, there's Madagascar. We'll actually be landing in the Pacific Ocean this time, which is good. So the next thing it does, so you can see we're just a little bit out from apoapsis, and so at this point it's going to turn and center the ship for a retrograde burn. So I set it to about 25 seconds out, just in case you have a bigger ship. Try to make my scripts general, which is why you saw me configuring a little bit with the parachute earlier. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll burn. You can see the paraapsis dropping, and 33 is about a pretty safe. The script's actually set to about 35, but the computer can't hit it quite as good, but it's better, as good or better as a human. So now we're doing some dynamic time warping where it's checking the altitude basically, and as we get lower, it adjusts the time warp, so we're not waiting forever to hit periapsis. So you can see our time to periapsis has dropped from like an hour now down to 7 minutes or so. Okay, now we're entering the atmosphere. And so the ship, of course, is turning retrograde again because when it goes to time warp, it's on rails, and so the Kerbal stops keeping track of its persistence. There are some mods that do keep persistence, but I don't think they're yet available for 1.2.2. So I can only work with mods that we have. For the same reason, the Deadly Reentry mod has not been updated, even though the stock now has reentry heating, so it's somewhat obsolete. So we'll be entering on the night side of the planet, which means we don't get to see the ground very well. You can kind of see, I think that's Madagascar right there. But no, it wouldn't be Madagascar or land in the Pacific. Not exactly sure what that is, but we'll get a nice view of the reentry flares. So as you can see, we're waiting to decelerate. I left of the fuel, so right when we're above the atmosphere before we start getting the plasma, it'll burn retrograde to slow us down, because you can see that we picked up quite a bit of speed. So we're at 8.2 when orbital velocity was at 7.7 or so. So that's set to go off around 97,000, so now we just have to wait a bit for our rocket to drop. You can see our vessel mass. It actually should drop a fair amount as we get rid of the rest of the fuel. And we have a really good thrust-to-weight ratio, so it'll be a pretty effective burn. Let's see, anything else of interest? Our eccentricity, of course, will go up. And we're entering almost sideways, you can see. So even though we're dropping at, 500 a second or so, our path is almost, it's like we're at a 5-degree angle from direct east. So we're pitched over really, really far. It's a pretty shallow descent. So the burn should be coming up in a few seconds now. In time. You can see our distance changing. So we're actually, since we're going to the Pacific Ocean, it's taking a little longer, and we'll actually lose signal as we go. So now you can see that our periapsis is low enough, it doesn't consider us in orbit anymore. So let me, so you can kind of see the horizon with the stars and where it hits, but that's not really the important part. You can see the engine blowing as it heats up, and the important thing is our speed. We were at about 8.2, now 7.4. So I think we'll bleed off almost a full 1,000 meters per second, which every bit helps. You can see the atmosphere, even at 86, which normally you don't notice any sort of effects on the speed. There's actual heating. So we bled off more than a kilometer per second. That's nice. So the other one I didn't activate on the other video, now goes off with the staging, and you can see that the heat shield immediately begins glowing and heating up. So we can actually watch the ablator go off, or if you're interested, I can pull these down a bit, and we can watch that it'll actually show how much electric charge we're using to sustain our path or our orientation, and how much we're actually losing of the ablator per second. So even though we have some heat, it's going to drop before we get the plasma shield. The other thing is, so we stage the engines. After that, it starts automatically staging until it gets to the last stage, because we want to make sure all our parachutes are set up. So as you can see from what we did earlier, so it should deploy about 1,000, which so the first minimum pressure is when the chute actually kind of goes out and starts slowing the craft down. It acts more like a drogue chute as long as you deploy at a safe speed, which it's set to do. I guess old patches didn't, but when I started playing, they were always deployed safely, where they would deploy at all, they just crash. And you can see that the altitude is set to about 1,000, because we'll have an ocean landing, so don't have to worry about mountains or anything like that. So we're hitting the plasma trail pretty good, so I'll turn it a bit so we can kind of see it all. See some stars in the background. And our speed is decreasing fairly rapidly, which is interesting because if you come down from suborbital, you'll actually keep picking up speed, usually until you're about 30 kilometers up. So at 60 we're already accelerating, which tells you how fast we're really going at this small air resistance. Slows us down that much. It also helps that this isn't a pod, it's a probe, and so it's actually very light in comparison, and this big air fairing surface provides a lot of drag compared to the weight, but that also helps us slow down. You can see in the atmosphere bar that we're still hardly in any atmosphere, but we're really pretty plasma trail right now. And as you can see, so it was at 200, so we've burned down about 178. And so this is kind of the fun part of reentry, hoping your craft survives. Which I'm pretty sure this will. We only have 0.7, so remember we started with 2.5 before we burned off all the fuel and jettisoned the engines. I have actually on this mod come down from orbit with the fuel tanks and into the tack sideways because, embarrassingly, I accidentally forgot to have a retrograde burn when we were coming really fast. I didn't have a heat shield, so the pilot ended up surviving like that in Australia when I was trying to land San Francisco, but it worked. So you can see, yeah, there's no way we're going back into orbit now, even at 3,400 kilometers per second. And we've lost almost half our speed by the time we hit 40k, which isn't bad at all. Now it's slowing down. So even though the script looks like it's done, it is still doing us a favor by maintaining control. So it's basically acting as the SAS system of it and just keeping the craft pointed in the right angle. I found SAS systems aren't as effective as manual piloting. Like you can, even if the SAS doesn't know how to keep it straight, sometimes manually you can force it. And I think the computer is actually better because it's evaluating our path every millisecond basically, which a human of course cannot do. We're limited to maybe hundreds of a second if you have a really quick reaction time. So the heat shield's basically useless. I like to keep it on just because you recover a bit of money from it and the chute can handle the weight, so why not? But you could jettison the heat shield at this point if your craft is too heavy, just trying to get rid of some weight. So at this point we're at 27k, and you can see that, so the ship, it's trying to point retrograde, so you can see it's going to slowly follow this up. Partially it's also helped by the aerodynamics, even though there's very thin air, we're getting a bit, and we're still moving at a fairly good clip. So the script's actually programmed to release control about 10k up because the parachute's already staged, and so it'll go up whether we have a connection or not, because once we lose this, we can't download from the archive anymore because we have no connection. I was able to do it in space because the Realistic Earth mod, along with remote text, puts a lot of real-life ground stations on it, and so at that point it was very easy to maintain a connection, copy from the drive, because I hadn't written those scripts ahead of time. I wrote the other one in orbit, but so this thing you can tell is really good aerodynamic drag because we've slowed down to 263 just by in this time atmosphere. So at this point, it's basically, I guess the max acceleration this is kind of useless at the moment. Let's see, so yeah, the boring part is after the plasma and the light shows over and all the fun's done, you just kind of have to sit there and wait. So I think I'll wait for the parachute to deploy, and then I'll engage the physics warp. So, as you know, physics warp is a little different than time warp in that it actually does do the physics at coarser intervals of delta V. And so, but it does save time. So now you can see that we're falling almost straight up. About 10K I haven't released the controls just because air will keep us stable at that point, and we're not going so fast that any rotation will actually cause it to want to move over, because this is obviously more aerodynamic pointing straight down. This is, which is what the heat shield's for. So yeah, there we go. So it releases controls and says, hey, we're ready to land, and then KOS just outputs program ended. So we'll wobble a little bit, but now that we're down into the thicker parts of the atmosphere, that should subside as we go, and there's no astronauts to make sick. So at this point, it just saves as control, so you can see the electric charge isn't as much. The only thing we have draining right now is I think MechJeb uses a tiny bit of charge. Yeah, and apparently it actually has its own battery, which is nice. Of course, I have the big 200, so I can close the console at this point because we don't need it if the program's over. So you can see this is its own battery pack, which is, I found, pretty important. And then satellites, of course, blocked by Earth. Yeah, there's no sun at this point. If we wait till morning, eventually the probe would power back up again. So still coming down. Wow. Even a pod, I think, doesn't slow down quite this much. And so you could hear maybe that the parachute just deployed. Let's see. Can you hold your mouse over? I can kind of see it a bit, and here's the horizon. If you look really closely, you see the stars and some of the waves. So here's the parachute deployed. There's a little green light here showing where the actual probe core is. So at this point I have it set to deploy 1,000, so let's physics warp down there just so this video doesn't go on forever. So we'll slow down, parachute deploys. You can see the G-forces go up to about 4 for a few seconds. We'll slow down from 100 to, should be around 5 meters per second, which is a pretty safe landing speed. And so you have to do it early because it took 400 meters to slow down. So you definitely don't want to do this at 400 meters or you're really going to risk a collision. So you can see the stars. And now I'll just engage max physics warp until we're down to about 100 meters or so. So cool, you can see the sun. If you can kind of see the water, it's really dark, but it is coming closer. So start slowing down physics warp. Just don't want anything to accidentally blow up because the physics calculations are wrong. And we should land pretty soon. So 35, 30. You can see it still counting down. And there we go. So everything kind of goes to 0-ish. Of course, we're bobbing the water a bit. And so, thanks for watching. Oh no, it's gonna tip over. Oh well. Wow, it's possibly kind of unrealistic how it's just sitting on the water like that. So there's no EVA or anything we can do because there's no conversion board, but thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed how to use a reentry script to get here. Thank you.